Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction House taking a look at some of the guns they're going to be selling in their upcoming December of 2016 premiere auction. What we have here today are a pair of little tiny experimental or prototype Colt pocket revolvers. Now these are based on the 1855 side hammer style of Colt. This is typically often called a Root revolver, named after Elisha Root, who was one of Colt's managing engineers. In fact, after Colt died in 1862, Root would take over as president of the Colt company for a couple years until he also died. However, Root was a pretty talented engineer of his own. He had a number of patents in association with Colt, and well, it seems he may not have actually really deserved to have this entire gun named after him, but he did come up with a couple of the elements of it. Probably most significantly in the long run is he came up with the creeping loading lever, which we see on these two guns. That was a cool innovation that made it a lot easier to load these guns. They were muzzle loaders, and you had to cram a lead ball into the cylinder, and what you really wanted to do was get a larger ball than cylinder and actually swage it down and create a nice tight seal. This creeping loading lever allowed you to do that a lot more easily, especially on smaller guns like this where the lever was shorter. Anyway, the side hammer design has a number of differences to it from the normal, what we think of today as the normal Colt revolver, primarily that it's actually locking on the cylinder axis or arbor rather than on the cylinder itself. And that resulted in these little pocket guns in a fairly delicate system. They did sell well, they were popular, and they were very successful for Colt, but they weren't mechanically the greatest design. What these two are, interestingly, are a prototype version of this design that uses a zigzag type of cylinder instead of what would come to be used on the 1855 Colt pocket. With the normal side hammer system, you end up with some little bitty parts that are, of course, delicate. So these are an experiment in a different method of connecting the cylinder to the hammer. And they are basically a little connecting rod running to this sliding bar. That bar runs in these zigzags, and of course it's physically connected to the hammer. So when you pull the hammer back, this comes back, forces the cylinder to rotate. If we take a look at that up close, see when the hammer comes back, cylinder rotates. When you drop the hammer, we've got that is effectively your firing pin. That's going to hit a percussion cap and detonate it. And of course this sliding bar goes forward with the hammer to index into position so that when you cock it again, it will rotate the cylinder again. What's happening there, of course, is that that bar is traveling forward in this groove, and then it gets caught in this diagonal groove when cocked, and then that forces the cylinder to come back here. And then when the hammer goes forward, it goes in that straight groove again. So this is the same basic principle as you would find on, say, a Webley Fosbury or one of the early Mauser revolvers. However, it's not quite identical. On those later guns, there'd actually be a lug traveling in the bottom of the frame here that would do this work, run in these grooves and index the cylinder. That's a more elegant system than what Colt was experimenting with here much earlier, because this has this big exposed rod or rail, connecting rod there, where if your frame is big enough to permit having a piece in the bottom, where it's actually totally hollow here, that allows it to stay out of the way. It allows the hammer to work uninterrupted and prevents dirt and grit from getting into the system because it's much more enclosed. Now what's also interesting is that the one patent that I've been able to find for Elisha Root on this system does talk about a zigzag revolver, but it's actually a little bit of a different system. It doesn't include this connecting rod. What it does instead is actually have an operating lug in the bottom, and it's operated by a circular, almost a ring trigger that cycles back and forth and acts to both rotate the cylinder and fire the gun when it comes all the way back. Now you'll notice both of these revolvers have this open bottom of the frame, and I wonder if it isn't possible that these were both originally made based on that Root patent with these sliding ring triggers and then modified into this system later as a secondary experiment. There's basically no documentation on these things, but that seems to me to be an interesting potential, certainly a plausible thing that could have been done. While we're here, we can also take a look at this, the creeping loading lever. There are two different versions here. This one actually has gear teeth sort of cut all the way through the barrel there. That, of course, allows the rod to come backward as it is engaged. This one is a little bit different in that it just has round lugs. So round holes in the barrel and round lugs on the lever. This is a little bit more of a, this is a slightly later system. This is more like what you would actually get on the production revolvers. And this system would be used in all the following Colt pistols, so primarily the 1860 Armies. Some differences at the back as well on the exact mechanism of, or the exact manner of attaching the cylinders and the cylinder arbors. Now the only marking on these two pistols is on this particular one, which is marked Colt's patent up here. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Very rarely do we get to see experimental or prototype Colt revolvers, and dare say these are two one-of-a-kind pistols, if that's a thing. Neat to see the zigzag system as well on an earlier gun than we would find most of the time. The Mauser revolvers and the Webley Fosbury's all came several decades after these. So if you'd like to own one or both of these yourself, they are, of course, coming up for auction. If you take a look at the description text below, you'll find links to both of their catalog pages here at Rock Island. You can take a look at Rock Island's pictures and description, and if you're interested in them, place bids online, over the phone, or live here in person. Thanks for watching.